So from an agenda perspective, I'm going to just introduce the team quickly and what the declaration is about if you're new to the movement and the program. And then we're going to have great people come and talk about what they've been doing with the declaration in different councils. We'll also do a little bit of reflect back over the last year, and then we're going to end with how you can get involved, as well as an amazing quiz. There's a virtual reality gaming headset worth 300 quid on offer, and some of the question will be what you hear in the event, so you will have to listen carefully. Next slide, please. So to start off with, who are we? If you haven't met us before, we've got a lovely team. If I can get some of the team to turn on their videos and wave. It's myself, Sheldon, Linda's on maternity leave at the moment, Sarah's a delivery manager, Agley a collaboration manager, and Jamie as our economic analyst. Next slide. And then we've got Sam also as collaboration manager, Maddie, who's our comms manager, and the two Charlottes, one in content and one in admin and project support. So lots of lovely people to help support you in local government. Next slide, please. And for those who are new to the declaration movement, just a quick overview of the cornerstone of our program, the declaration. Next slide, please, Charlotte. So the declaration brings into one place the shared vision and ambition of local government to redesign services around the needs of the people using them, break the dependence on inflexible and expensive technology, design safe and secure ways for sharing information, demonstrate digital leadership, and embed an open culture to work in the open whenever we can. And this isn't about us. We see ourselves as the current custodians of the declaration, but it's a local digital movement that's owned by all of you. Next slide, please. So we have 243 English councils that have signed the declaration and committed to its principles so far. And in total, we have 275 signatories that includes other government, other UK local authorities, third party and charity and voluntary organizations as well. Next slide. So without further ado, I want to hand you over to some of the fabulous people who will be showcasing how the declaration has helped their councils. And starting with Annie and Dave from Croydon Council. So there'll be time for Q&A at the end, but feel free to pop questions into the chat and we'll read those out to Annie and Dave. So Annie and Dave, hopefully you're both online and ready to crack on. Fantastic.
Well, I'm definitely here. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
That's all working. Absolutely marvellous. I'm sure Annie is somewhere about and she'll...
Hello.
Yay, here she is. Fabulous. So, Annie, do you want to do your intro first? Who are you?
No, thanks. I'm here. You don't see me.
Oh, there you are. Yes, we can see you now. So, Annie, who are you?
What did you say, Dave?
I said, who are you and what do you do at the council?
Who am I? Oh, I see, that kind of introduction.
Yeah.
You meant an introduction to our talk.
No.
But no, I can do who I am. That I definitely know. I am the user-centered design lead at Croydon Digital Service, which means my team is composed of interaction and content designers and user-centered designers, which is a role that we've sort of merged user research and service design together. And I sort of lead on trying to make user-centered design as embedded in the organisation as we can get it.
And a very good job of that you do too, may I just say. So yeah, I'm Dave Briggs. I'm head of digital ops at Croydon Council. That's a fancy way of saying the head of IT, but please don't hold that against me. I sort of look after a lot of the sort of the infrastructure-y stuff, but I do try to get involved in some of the other bits and pieces as well. But given that, one of the taglines of Local Gov Digital sort of declaration is to fix the plumbing. Then, as the man that's sort of responsible for some of that plumbing in Croydon, I guess it's a good position to be in. So what we're going to talk about today, in terms of what we've been up to in Croydon with regard to the declaration, is I'm going to chunter on for a little bit, for a couple of minutes, just about how awesome I think the declaration is and why it's a good thing. And then Annie, I think, is going to talk a bit more about how we've specifically applied it within Croydon and how it's helped us. So hopefully that'll be useful. We'll both keep half an eye on the questions, so as they crop up, if they take our fancy, we might well pick up on those as we're going through. So yeah, 3 years ago, the Digital Declaration was published, and a whole bunch of people signed up to it. My personal view is, being somebody that sort of bounced around the local government digital scene for a few years now, is that it was a much needed intervention, I think. And the biggest thing that it did, that was the most helpful thing that it did, was it provided this sort of common definition of what we're talking about when we're talking about digital, which is really, really important. So, for a long old time, to some folk, we were talking digital meant channel shift and ghastly things like that. In other councils, it meant making PDF forms into web forms and that kind of thing. And then for other people, it meant taking really radical sort of transformative approaches to the way that their organisations operated. And it's really difficult to be able to collaborate well and to share good practice and all that kind of stuff when we're all saying the same words but meaning different things by them. So by having this sort of sector-wide definition of what we mean by that word digital was incredibly helpful for me. The other things, I think, is that it provided a welcome balance in a sense, because for a lot of time, we spend a lot of our time, I think, saying that digital isn't all about technology and things like that, and trying to persuade people about the fact that actually this is much about people and about culture as it is anything else. But the thing is that sometimes we can go a bit overboard with that kind of talk, and because actually technology is quite important to all of this, and technology is proven in local government to be a huge barrier to being able to implement some of the great digital change that is possible. So that kind of rebalancing of things that the declaration does, which is says that this is as much about fixing some of that technology plumbing as it is about bringing new working cultures and that kind of thing into our organisations, I think was really, really welcome. The other obvious thing I think that the declaration brought in was, of course, the money that came with it, and how much of a motivator that was for people to sign up to the declaration. I wouldn't care to comment on, but the fact is that some terrific projects were funded via the declaration and continue to be funded, and we in Croydon have been really lucky to be involved in quite a few of those. I think Will, who's coming up later, is going to talk in a lot more detail about local gov Drupal, so I won't mention that too much. But as a result of the funding, not only have we done that, we've also been involved in a terrific project with Hackney and others around looking into just how reusable and shareable user research is in one geographical location in another, which is absolutely fantastic. And the other one is around the development of the digital inclusion toolkit, which we've worked on with Leeds Council. Apama Khan, one of our lovely colleagues in Croydon, has been leading on that for us, and they've produced a fantastic reusable set of recipes for great digital inclusion work there. So that's been absolutely terrific. And I think I'll just finish up these sort of notes just by saying that I still think there's a hell of a lot of work to be done, not just in our council, because we know that we've got a long way to go in terms of meeting that hugely ambitious set of ambitions that are shared in the declaration. We're miles away from a lot of that stuff, and we've got loads of work to do. And I think that possibly one of the things that might occur, hopefully, as a result of these celebrations around the declaration, is just to focus everybody's minds back on it again, to focus our minds on those things that we're not quite doing to meet that incredibly high standard, and to find some ways for us all across local government to share some of the tips and the tricks that we can use to actually help us get a lot better at those things that the local declaration obviously tells us we should be doing, but perhaps we're not quite, and that's something I'd really like to see happen over the coming months and years. But that's probably enough from me. Annie's going to talk about some of the specific ways that we use declaration in Croydon.
I am. Thank you, Dave. Yeah, so we thought it would be useful to give you an example of how we used the local digital declaration in practice to do something helpful and useful with our team. So it's really easy to sign up to a set of principles, isn't it? And it's harder to get it embedded across an organisation. And like Dave says, we've still got a long way to go with that. But it's a really, really useful tool to be able to frame a conversation around. And I think we kind of had the benefit of joining 2 years ago and having a wider refresh with Neil joining as our Chief Digital Officer as well, to be able to have a sort of a bigger refresh. It can be quite hard if it's just sort of another week to be able to go, right, now we're signed up to the local digital declaration. So it was useful to use it and helpful that we were starting at the same time. And what we did was do lots of workshops with our own team initially to get them thinking and understanding where we were coming from, and to give them a voice and get them to help us decide how we were going to move forward. So it's a really useful way to get to know each other as well, and to get to understand some of the things that had been going on and that they'd been sort of battling with. So it created a really useful framework to be able to say, look, these are the principles. What would you say are the benefits of them? What would you say would be any challenges to stop us from being able to work in that way? What's your experience lead you to think about these things? So if we look at kind of design services that best meet the needs of citizens, then we got really interesting answers around where the IT system, IT team at that time was in the process. We sort of understood more that policy happens, things get signed off, business cases get made. So by the time it was getting to our department, it was way down the process and really hard to try and say, right, well, can we do a discovery now on the thing that you think you're quite close to buying and that you know all about? And can we start to come in and explain to you why discovery is good, when actually all you want to do is buy this thing by this point and you've kind of already decided. And so we were able to look and say, okay, if we're going to be able to meet needs of citizens and design services in that way, how do we start changing our processes? How do we get user needs further back in the system? How do we get policy involved? How do we get ELT decisions and strategy and 5-year plans? How do we get users embedded there so that by the time it feeds through, we're not at a point where we're just going to frustrate people? So that was really useful. Challenging the technology market to offer the flexible services and tools we need. We, started to understand, I'm sure, some very shared issues around the same old contractors supplying massive systems and the experience of some of the team that had been there for a while and the frustrations around that. And so just understanding those bigger things that are going to take a while to really get fixed. But that at least we can start having those conversations. We can break down, and we did break down contracts into much smaller sets of smaller contracts rather than big monolithic ones. We started to talk about how we could add a better design style, or start to make the user experience better for like big adult social care systems. So it's just a really useful tool to be able to say, well, where are we? What's our starting point? What's realistic? And to also be able to understand kind of frustrations of the past around, which again is something I'm sure we've all got experience of. A digital transformation program had come before us that had promised the world, taken the staff, not delivered all the things. So even to help understand the culture that we were up against, in terms of people thinking, well, that's what digital is. We were able to use both the local digital declaration and Tom Loosemore's definition of applying the culture and practices, processes and technologies of the internet era to respond to people's raised expectations, to just be able to get us all thinking in a different way and like taking all those post-it notes and making a plan. can,
Lovely stuff.
Go on.
Yeah. Does anybody have any questions for our consideration, or would you like us to just to talk about some other things?
Sing.
Well, while we're waiting for some questions in the chat, I have a question, which is, what was the immediate impact of the declaration on your team?
Interesting. So I'll have a first crack at this, and then Annie may well have other things. So I think that, you know, one of the things that I love about the declaration, I think, is the focus on the cultural side of things. You know, it's a really important thing. It's mentioned in the loose small definition that Annie just shared, that, you know, this idea about, you know, the culture of the internet era, you know, coming into our organisations, which, if we're honest, being all massive fans of local gov as we are, occasionally, you know, the working culture can be a little on the crusty side. So, you know, the declaration provided, I think, a bit of a wind of change that blew through, certainly originally in our team, and later wider through the organisation. So, and one of the best ways that I think that was demonstrated was when we started, as all of us as declaration signatories should be doing, is working in the open. So one of the easiest ways to do that is to start blogging about what we're up to. So we started doing that almost straight away. And for a while it was Neil and Annie and I doing a lot of that kind of work. But I think it was the first blog post published by somebody that wasn't one of us, was published by one of our service delivery managers, who was responsible for effectively the IT help desk and that kind of stuff. And it was the first time he'd ever, I think, put anything on social media or whatever, but he wrote about, you know, the change as we were transitioning an IT department into a more sort of user-centered digital service, and he wrote about, you know, how he could apply that to his more traditional IT kind of world. And that was just an amazing thing to see. You know, it came out of nowhere. Nobody asked him to do it, but he'd been having these thoughts and he wanted to share them with people. So it was absolutely fantastic.
Thank you.
Just find you.
So there are some other questions coming in. Someone
called Will Callahan's got a question.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I'm not sure I know the answer though, so let's move on. No, we
Will worked with us in Croydon. I would say we haven't talked to members about the declaration. That's the honest truth. It's a really long game, and also, like, a lot of our members left, and so did our chief exec. So we did some talking about it all, and now we're going to do it all again. But what we have done is recently done a piece of work that was involved in the members' inquiry service, and that was really useful because we were able to say it's really worth doing a piece of discovery, and then that means that councillors and executive leaders were involved in the piece of discovery, and everyone has a much better idea of what discovery is from doing and being involved, and why it's therefore a useful thing to find out why not just a system change will fix things. So now perhaps we can sort of remind them of the declaration that they've signed up to.
Yeah, absolutely brilliant. Emma Cleal doesn't provide a question, but has given us some praise, Annie, which is exactly what we're looking for. So thank you very much for that. I think Emma is my favourite. Yeah, keep that coming. So Mike Thacker asked, have you managed to reduce the procurement of large monolithic systems in favour of smaller interoperable ones? Yes and no, I think, is the answer to that one, Mike. As you probably know, you know, the local government software market is not exactly teeming with young upstarts offering, you know, cloud native, digital ready applications, particularly in sort of in the line of business sphere. What we have been able to do, though, in one or two places is, firstly, we did quite a big bit of work where we did have a big monolithic IT outsourcing contract with a company that won't get named, Capita, which was then broken up and provided to a bunch of different SMEs and things like that. So we could break that up, and that's seen, you know, a huge improvement in terms of the way that people respond to our traditional IT setup. We have procured and implemented some big traditional line of business systems in adult social care and in housing, for the simple reason that at the time that we were doing that, with timescales we were working to, the requirements of the services, there was little else that we could do there. But what we have been able to do is to sort of pick away at the edges of some of those line of business systems by actually providing particularly customer facing elements of things, which are using some of the stuff that Annie's team has been working on around with the user research, the interaction design, the great content design, and all that kind of thing. So we're offering much more usable front ends to some of our residents where we can. And then the final one I would mention is that we have had we did have a very big and pretty expensive Microsoft Dynamics situation, which we use for CRM, and we ran our My Account thing off that. We have managed to, or in the process of replacing all of that with something we're building in low code using Netcall's platform to do that. We're going live with that in September, which is when we'll be able to decommission Dynamics, and that is going to see a quite significant saving on the software licensing. So some good news there and some not so good news, but we're doing our best where we can. I don't know how much longer we've got for questions. I'm just going to keep going until somebody tells me to stop. Helen. One, okay, so let's say Helen's one is next then. Annie, how did we get buy-in from other services across the authority, would you say?
Do you know, so we had some. We've used a little bit of you need to do a service assessment, here's why. It's because you've signed up to this thing is real. It means we're going to do this nice collaborative, it's not a test, service assessment with you. But also the biggest buy-in really came when COVID hit, when we were all at action stations scrambling to build separate COVID apps. That's when people got it. So I would say, you know, adult social care transformed in both. People are so used to waterfall projects, to having to know everything they want up front, and to just being able to pass over more info and requirements as they happen. That once we'd made a shielding app, once we'd iterated it with them, once we'd done a couple of grants things, the buy-in is really from doing. So it's just somehow getting a way to start doing whatever you think is the right team or project, or maybe just chance comes along and everything else moves out the way and you get to build an app with your low-code team, because otherwise people will be stuck in their houses with no food or medicine, and that tends to clear the way for you to be able to do something. That's when they're like, oh, right, you do stick around. You know, our experience of IT is you get this much time and then we're gone. Whereas when you were saying, let's do this small thing and then let's build on it, you actually meant it. And now we've got a thing that works really well, and we got the things we needed most importantly first. And then we built the other things, and then we connected the database, you know, that kind of thing. So, yeah, the biggest buy-in comes from the doing.
Thank you so much, Dave and Annie. And I think Dave also answered the remaining questions on the site. So fabulous multitasking there, Dave. Thank you both. So we're going to move on to our next group of speakers, Melanie and Will. Are you both there?
Hello.
Will. And we got Melanie.
Hope so.
Will, are you sharing slides?
Yes, I am. My
Brilliant.
cat's here as well.
Great.
That's good. Shall I start?
Yes, please.
Okay. Can you see that okay?
Yes, we can.
Fabulous. Thank you, Annie and Dave, for that fantastic presentation. You're a hard act to follow. I'm Will Callaghan from Cumbria Council, and we are local Gov Drupal. And I'm joined hopefully by Melanie from Waltham Forest Council. And we're going to tell you a bit about our software and how the local digital declaration has helped us. And also that the badge there is my cat. I'll tell you more about him as we go. So first off, if you don't know very much about us, the problem is probably one that you all recognise. So we are nearly 400 councils across the UK, and we all need to publish web content. We all have .gov sites, and every so often, every 3 to 5 years, we have to rebuild these sites, and that costs money and time, and often we don't have that money. And at the same time, you know, we're all doing this and we're not really swapping notes, although that is starting to change, and hopefully we're a part of that. Our product, our service, I guess, is local Gov Drupal, and you can go and download it today. It's on github.com/local Gov Drupal, and you can see here that it's made up of component parts like events and theme and services and so on. I'll explain what those all are. But if you want to go, if you know a bit of Drupal, go and have a go. It's all detailed how you do it. And it's made of a kit of parts. So you go download Drupal 9. Hopefully you know what Drupal is. And then if you want the whole of what we do, you need to download services, and then on top of that you add other components as you like, and add a theme on top. But there's nothing to stop you taking one of the components in the middle there. So if you just wanted directories, you could take that. If you just wanted step by step, you could take that and add it to your own Drupal platform. Lots of sites have been built. So I think Dave and Annie mentioned the Croydon website is local Gov Drupal powered. Also Lambeth, Westminster, many more sites launching over the next few months. And we all share common code. The themes are slightly different, but the architecture underneath is the same. I added this slide about 2 minutes ago to illustrate that we're responsive. So during the lockdown, the Croydon team, of which I was a part, built this feature called service updates. Long page of too much information for people. So we said, okay, well, how are we going to make this easy for users to get hold of? Designed in-house by Croydon, conceptualized by the team, written by the team there. So we're in complete control of what we were doing, and that tested very well. So we're very happy. I think the reason why we're here today is to sort of shout loud about our love for the local digital declaration, because we basically wouldn't have happened had the declaration not been put in place. We had some code already. So I worked with Annie at Brighton Council. We had a website. We were given a clean slate to go and build a website. Croydon Council needed a website. And we thought, well, why don't we share? And it's thanks to the two folks preceding me that we were able to get an agreement with Brighton and push ahead. And all the support that we've had from these teams is absolutely amazing. But the thing about having that code, that's not a distribution. That's not a Drupal distribution. It doesn't talk about the ways of working, how councils join, how we make decisions, and the declaration has provided all that for us. We've been funded 3 times, and I'll briefly describe the phases. So we had a discovery a couple of years ago. Do councils want to share Drupal code? The answer was yes. And the phase we've finished more recently, an alpha was saying, okay, well, we want to share code. What specifically? What standards do we want? How do we make this thing flexible? And how do we decide what gets included and not? The phase that we're on right now is beta. It finishes at the end of September. It's about adding the features that we didn't have time to get to. And there's a few of those. And how do we scale? We're 12 councils now. What about when we're 20 councils? And how do we pay for ourselves ultimately? You know, these are big questions that we're answering now. I'm going to briefly mention the badges. We picked them because they're milestones in our project. So in Discovery, our delivery manager, Finn, I don't know if he's on the call, wore a pink, it was the phase where everybody was wearing hats during lockdown, and he wore a pink cowboy hat, so that's quite funny. And then the second badge is my cat, Stobbinge, who kept popping up during calls during lockdown. We've all had to go through it, and we've been joined by our pets, and that's one of my cats. And the third patch, we don't quite know. We're seeing what happens in the rest of the project, and we'll pick something appropriate. I won't read this out, but this is one of our developers who's also a core maintainer of Drupal. So he's in the central team that does this, and it's, you know, this is the way we need to work, basically. Where we are now. So we are 12 councils and growing strong, lots of expressions of interest, which is great. I'm personally working for Cumbria now, and you can go and visit the Cumbria website. It's needs work. Let's face it. It's 13 plus years old, and we saw the opportunity to use local gov Drupal to do something about that. So if my that's it. Okay. So these are screenshots from the alpha which we've built, which is hopefully going live on the 11th of August. We took one section of content and completely rewrote it. We used all the local gov Drupal components, and we did a design layer. So, you know, it's more work on content than it is on dev, and rightfully we're spending more time on content design. I think that project was about 25 grand altogether, mostly content. So it's brought the cost of this sort of thing right down. I'll talk briefly about how we collaborate, but there's probably a whole other talk on this. So we have two kind of information sharing groups, the product group and the technical group, which generally meet once a month. And that's all the product managers and all the developers sit in both, you know, those groups. But the decisions are actually made by the circles on the outside. So if we want to build something new, say formed, we'll make a working group for that. And the people who are interested get involved. One of those projects is happening right now. It's being led by Tom Steele in Croydon. It's going great guns already. Councils can come and choose to be part of these things if they want to. If they don't want to, that's fine. But, you know, they're open and transparent, and they're there for people to join if they want to. Very briefly, the benefits, cost savings, collaboration makes us better at what we do. We build things more often. We build things once rather than many times. And the content formats, they're accessible, responsive. We've just got AA for our base theme, WCAG AA, so that's good. It's all good. A quote, which I won't read to you, but from a web project manager who saved lots and lots of money and did his project faster. I'll hand over to Melanie, who's from Waltham Forest as one of our partner councils, and she'll tell you more about their experience.
Hi, I'm Melanie Reid. Sorry I'm a couple of minutes late, a few technical issues, but I'm here now, which is good. So I think the main, I just want to talk through some of the benefits for us. So we joined in the spring, summer last year, initially just kind of pulled down the code from Git and had a look at it and had a play with it, and then actually kind of formally joined more in the autumn time. And really it's saved us months and months of development time, which has meant that my developers, I've been able to focus them on extra benefits that we wouldn't have necessarily built in our first iteration of the site. So we've done a whole piece around enhancing the events section and how the events work, and we've able to feed that back into the core code. So we're in the process of working with the team to kind of move that across. We've also really focused on search, so we've done some really nice enhanced stuff in Solar around predictive text and kind of taking people straight to the page rather than having to go to search results page, and done some a taxonomy behind the scenes. Again, all of that we're going to feed back in. If anyone wants to use that, they can, if they're looking to use Solar, we can share that, and at the moment we're going through that process as well. We've also led on one of the work streams around content lifecycle. One of my teams led on that, and we've, you know, that's another thing we would have had to build ourselves, but we've kind of collaborated with councils across the group and got their feedback as well and input. So that's been a really great benefit for us because we've done more than we had originally planned to. I think the other thing is oh.
My buttons aren't working.
No, that's
sorry.
all right. Don't worry,
working
that's fine.
Earlier either. Sorry.
Don't worry, it's fine. It's fine. So we also have used features that we hadn't considered. So one of them is guided processes, and I'll show you a demo of what we've been doing with that. And that was in the box. We hadn't even really thought of using that as a process, and we're like, oh, actually, this would really work for us. It's been a really wonderful experience working in collaboration with other councils. We've kind of learnt loads. We've really improved our kind of agile working methodologies as a team, and we've kind of, you know, you can bounce ideas off other people and you're not kind of working in a vacuum, which is really fantastic. And I mean, the knowledge sharing is great. We can sling a question into Slack and there's 10 other councils out there, so someone will have an answer or a suggestion, or they've had a similar problem, and we can kind of share that, which has been really fantastic. So I was just going to show, so this is an example of where this was how our current primary schools application for process is. It's pretty impenetrable. You have to kind of, I mean, the page stretches even further than what I could get on that little, but I tried to kind of squish in what I could. And what we've moved over is to using the guided processes, which again, it's just out of the box vanilla functionality, and we've kind of it's a really fantastic way of guiding someone through the process of doing the school application. It's much easier to work with. You've kind of broken it down. We've also looked at our copy and how we've reduced that massively. But yeah, that was just there. We didn't have to build it, which is fantastic. So, I mean, some of the other things that we've been involved in, we've done some blogging. So there's the local Gov Drupal blog. Go and have a look at that. I'm doing one at the moment on search, so I'll publish that soon. And we do sort of show and tells as well if there's a lot of interest in some of the blogs. And then we've also got a survey that a lot of my team have already contributed to, but I think we're really keen to get councils who aren't currently involved to take part in that survey, to understand what some of the barriers are as to why you'd want to get involved and how we can make it easier, and sort of how you might want to collaborate in the future as we grow as well, because there's that sort of challenge as we get bigger. And so that's with that. And so that's it from me. And so I don't know if you've got any questions for Will or I. I think I saw some pop in the chat as well. I have a quick look, see if I can. Wow, there's some long ones.
Oh, no beta patch, not yet. Sorry, I'm just sort of diving in halfway through. So we've just taken a break for 2-3 weeks, and we'll go into the second half of it, and we'll start making it then sort of in the back half of the project, because they're all based on experiences we have, and you never know, something extraordinary might happen, and we need to make, and we've already made the patch. So can we say what the front runners are, Melanie? Do you know what they are? I know of two. Do you know them? Or should I just say them for the patch? For
the patch? No, I don't. Go on.
Well, there was a chat in Slack. So one of the we're thinking, okay, we've had a cat, so what about a dog? So one of our developers has got a dog called Muttley, which is a great name for a dog. So he's a candidate for sure, and we could do something really, really cute. The other one is one of our developers runs a farm in Scotland, and some lambs were born. So we're thinking, stay with the animal theme, maybe some lambs. So that's two ideas right there. We'll see. We'll make one. More questions?
Question in the chat, Will.
Can you see it, Melanie, or shall I field the questions at
Yeah,
both of us?
if you can field them. Sorry, I can't. So what's I can see some of them. I think it's just there's a bit of delay on my side.
Shall I ask?
Please. Yeah.
To what degree do you think sharing of things like local Gov Drupal is going to be supported or driven by people moving between councils? Might some form of secondment between councils be useful to increase uptake and support or reuse? From Tony.
I think that's a really good idea, actually, and a really nice idea, and an opportunity to kind of work differently, because I think every council is using different technology and different. I know that we use, our forms engine and how we work using some of our automation around our processes is something else that we've been talking about anyway. And I would love to learn some more personally about how other people are managing online processes and integrating into CRM systems and things like that, just as an example for me personally. But I mean, I think that would be really fantastic to see how other people are working and learn. I mean, we've learned a lot just in my team, just by working with other peers.
Secondment I hadn't thought of, but that's a really good one. But I think also people do move around anyway. So as folks go to new places, they're going, have you heard about this thing? So, I think it's all working to drive uptake, so that's nice. But I think also the fact that we're all in Slack together, as Melanie said, if you've got a problem, there's a challenge, probably someone's had it. And there's a conversation going on about forms right now as we speak, and they're saying, okay, so how are we going to do this? And everyone's bringing experience from different places. You can't buy that stuff. And this wouldn't have happened without the declaration. It just wouldn't have happened. So we'd delighted with it. It's more than we ever expected.
And there's lots of love from you from Annie.
A lot of love back, Annie.
Yeah, absolutely. Question from David. Are the S&Ts public? The show and tells, are they live stream or put on YouTube later? Well,
so if they're really tiny, not, because they just sort of happen as and when they're spontaneous. But we've got a series called what's it called? Skill Sessions, which is on YouTube. It's on our YouTube channel, where the idea started where we're going, oh, we don't know about a particular thing like Drupal terms. We don't know what views means. I still don't know what it means. But we've got somebody who's an expert and they talk about it with everyone, and more experts join. The first one we did was accessibility, specific accessibility tools. So not just about accessibility, but here are some tools that you can really use. And that's on YouTube. It's really good. So they're about 50 minutes, so you have to commit to them, but they're good. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, because we will get, if we get 100 subscribers, we'll get a short link, and we really would like one. So thank you for that.
For that question. Great. And Charlotte's put the link to the YouTube channel, so please subscribe. The question for you, Melanie, from Richard. Did you see an immediate increase in visitor satisfaction after migrating the site? And
so we haven't gotten live yet. We're not live. So yeah, we're still in beta at the moment. Happy to share the link. It's in the public domain, so you can see it. But yeah, at the moment we're not there. But what we have been doing is some sessions with residents, sitting down, kind of walking them through content, getting their feedback, and it's been really positive feedback, and really useful feedback as well as kind of opportunities for us to learn as we've been going along. We've also done a lot of work with services, so what we're doing is democratizing our content out to different services, and we've really made the content management system much simpler to use. So we've introduced the gin theme, which has now been brought back into the main core as well. And it's just a bit more WordPressy in the kind of user interface, and the work we've done with services to try and get them managing their own content. So we're spending our energy teaching them how to write for the web, and then not having to teach them how to use content management systems. It's fairly intuitive. And also just getting feedback from them directly around some of the challenges they have and some of the complaints they get from residents, and trying to improve that content and the journey for those residents has been really successful as well. So yeah, November is when we go live. So if you go have a look today and then have a look in November.
Just back to Richard's question. So we've got a proper scientific experiment planned for the middle of August with the Cumbria Alpha launch. So we've already got analytics on the old site, and there's some good call center tracking also. I think it's another Netcall product that's doing that, and a satisfaction survey that we're going to do pre and post, versus when we go live with the new site. So we'll be able to get some decent data about that. But if you've got any thoughts about things that we should track, these things don't happen very often, is trying to get a new site launch at a time when you can measure it and everyone's interested in measuring it. So if you want to jump on this and tell me what we should measure, then please do, and we'll absolutely share that.
Great, thank you both. I think that's all the questions. Yeah. Oh, there's another one, but I think we're going to move on. I mean, Melanie, would you mind replying to Tony's question in chat, if that's okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
Thank you both. Amazing. So we're going to move on to, lastly, the things that we've been doing over the last year. So just a quick look back at the year. Next slide, please. So during COVID-19, next slide, please, Charlotte. During the initial crisis response, we kind of continued with our convening role, but actually focused on COVID. And we helped put together a public document, which was crowdsourced from a lot of amazing folks that's actually here today, with the useful digital tools and approaches. And we also carried out research to show how councils were responding and what the barriers were around shielding. So lots of great work there. And we ran weekly calls to share a lot of the information about shielding service, and also had councils share their approaches to common challenges. Next slide, please. And we also launched a specific fund to support local authorities on common digital and data COVID challenges in July 2020. Next slide, please. We had 125 applications, so it was very well kind of received. We could only select 11 projects to fund, and we got 800K out the door to those 11 projects. Next slide, please. And as a result of that, we've had such amazing stuff develop over a short time. I think the really impressive thing, as kind of like Annie and some of the others have touched on, is that during COVID, we just saw delivery times just like Sean, and things were just being delivered in days rather than months, which was amazing. So Newcastle City Council create the How Busy is Toon to show where parts of a city are overcrowded by applying like machine learning to real-time CCTV footage, and combine that with like other data sources to give information to citizens so they can make informed decisions about their movements. Bournemouth developed a beach check app to show how busy beaches are to allow visitors to make informed choices, and now the information is being shown for 10 plus councils. And Iceland UK, Sidgmore and Huntingdonshire District Council created a standard to identify vulnerable people and coordinate actions across multiple agencies. And not last but least, Leeds and Croydon shared what their practical approaches are in a digital inclusion toolkit to help other councils and community-based organizations. And next slide. And all of this fantastic work has been shared in the virtual showcases and recorded, so available to watch if you missed any, and we'll pop the link in the chat as well. Next slide, please. Don't think we've got any questions, so I'm going to crack on. So in the local digital fund itself, we go next slide. So total, we've actually funded 35 unique projects so far, and 100 plus councils have collaborated on those projects, and we've got 15 active projects at the moment. And I think this just debunks the myth that collaboration is not possible in local government. We know it's hard, and I think especially with like money available to help that collaboration, we definitely know it can happen. And as both sets of speakers have shown, it definitely benefits everyone. Next slide, please. So a big change to the fund that we brought on in the last year was the continuous funding model. And we listened to council's team's feedback that it can be a real stop-start experience in terms of funding and momentum for their projects. So we changed how we gave out funding so that each project can run at their own speed without being tied to when we have the next round of funding or when we're available to do another round of funding. And this gave council teams a lot more flexibility, and also helps with our own workload in terms of running rounds. And you can read more about how we developed the change in our blog, which will pop a link in the chat as well. Next slide. So since launching the continuous funding model, we have awarded 3.5 million just between September 2020 to this month, and 15 of our active projects have been through this new approach to funding. And we've actually received really good feedback from project teams that this approach does indeed help them to maintain momentum and keep their project going. So are there any questions before I move on? Don't think I've seen any. So next slide. So one of the great things about our program is that it's evolved significantly since the beginning of the declaration, and local digital isn't just local digital anymore in terms of what we're doing, and we've expanded into different programs like our department's planning reform program, and our sister team cyber has grown and is now a separate team. So I'm going to hand over to Matt now, tell us a little bit more on planning reform program. Matt, over to you.
Thank you, Mayen, and hi everyone. So my name is Matt Woodhill. I work on supporting the digital planning software projects that we're supporting. I was previously a collaboration manager, so I moved into this different space as well. And I'm going to be talking about three things. I'm going to be talking about the digital planning program at MHCLG, in case you're not aware of it, and then about the two products. So RIPA, reducing invalid planning applications, and BOPS, the back office planning system product. So let's jump to the next slide. Just start by giving you an overview of what digital planning is and how it fits into planning reform. So some of you might be aware that last summer the Planning for the Future white paper was published. It outlined a vision for the future of the planning system, so I'm sure you're aware of some of the kind of contentious political elements. But a key part of that was around digitising the planning system and with some key focus areas on things that hopefully is music to a lot of your ears, especially in line with some of the declaration principles that we've got. So we're talking about things like standardized and really usable data, talking about accessible services, which will hopefully be map-based when it comes to the final version of things, I suppose. And we're talking about accessing interoperable software so that there's more choice in the market. And importantly, that there's support for new market entrants and new products that can make planning services better. And these are all aimed at supporting better planning decisions, better plan making, and ultimately, I guess, a system that's easier for users, whether they're residents or developers, to navigate. So into the next slide, and then there's three strands to this. First is modern planning software, and that's what I'm going to talk to you about today. That's where the Ripper and BOPS projects sit. The key principle there is moving to something that's based around data, portable data, rather than PDF documents, fundamentally. There are two other strands, one on digital citizen engagement. This hasn't really kicked off yet, but there's going to be a lot more about this, so look out for more in the coming months ahead. And there is one project that we actually initially funded in the COVID-19 response round on digital site notices that's led by Camden in this space. And then the third pillar is around digital local plans, so plan making, but that's got machine readable data and rules underpinning it. I'm going to talk to you though about, if we move to the next slide, Ripper and BOPS. So Ripper and BOPS are two products that both began their lives as local digital fund projects. They were led by councils, initially by Southwark and Lambeth, and were joined by Buckinghamshire along their journey. They've also been contributed to by Northumberland, Camden and Coventry. So thank you to all of those councils for their engagement in this. I guess importantly, and really great piece of news for us, is they started processing live applications from last month for lawful development certificates. Lawful development certificates are what you need when you have a certificate that you need, to confirm that the works that you want to do to your property are allowed under permitted development rights. And the products themselves are now part of the planning reform programme. So a really good example of how the projects that we're kickstarting, catalysing through the local digital fund, can grow into really important parts of larger, in this case, national change programmes. So on this slide, I'm going to talk a bit more about Ripper, so reducing invalid planning applications tool. It's an applicant-facing tool, so could be used by the general public. Guides users through a series of steps so you can understand whether your project means you might need to go for full planning permission or not. So, and it provides you with a lawful development certificate if you qualify for that at the end of it. Now, the main problem, and you've probably already read this on the slide because it's been up for a bit now, the main problem that the team set out to address was to reduce the number of invalid planning applications a council received. Why is this important? Well, councils on average, and actually we've got detailed data for over the last 5 years from 8 councils in particular, but on average we say that councils receive, that up to 50% of the planning applications councils receive are invalid. And what invalid means in this context is that they're missing documentation, that there's been an error in something that was submitted. So quite fundamental things, and things that actually could be easily resolved with a decent piece of software that can help you through this process. It takes a lot of time as a result doing that toing and froing between planning officers and applicants to get the information right. And that's where the real time and cost savings can be made. But if we go to the next slide, the product actually does a lot more than just this, because what it does is it makes the whole planning system, in a sense, as an applicant, more accessible to you via a much better and improved user experience than you would otherwise have, where the onus is on you to learn and understand planning law and planning permissions, to get everything ready yourself and then to submit that. So instead of doing that, this tool asks questions by a series of flows. And you can see the demo in the GIF on the screen there, I hope. But if we go to the next slide, just want to make the point that it's not just a forms tool, because while underneath it, logic has been programmed in, what that logic does is it translates complex planning law into a series of questions of advice, so you no longer need to go and find that out for yourself. You're presented with that. And so it makes the planning requirements for your property immediately visible to you and understandable. And onto the next slide is a really interesting and clear indication of this. If you're looking to add a roof light under general permitted development, you're going to find that it can't exceed 6 inches in height. And on the tool, you can just simply click a little question mark button that will say, why does it matter? Ta-da. And actually explains why and points you towards the source legislation. If we go to the next tool now, BOPS, Back Office Planning System, This is a case management system for planning officers in councils, and it's designed to receive and process various activities around planning applications and making planning decisions. Currently, it's working for lawful development certificates as well. Now, among its key benefits, as well as the ones that are listed there, which I'm not going to read out, an improved user experience for planning officers over the existing software. And as part of that, things like the ability to consume data and not necessarily just put in links to PDF documents of drawings, maps, and other supplementary documentation. So if we jump to the next slide, what you can see on the right-hand side is the planner's view. So everything is there in an accordion in one place, and it would include an indication of whether an application has been flagged as invalid or not. Within this test case, it doesn't have that kind of red bit at the top saying potentially invalid, so we don't know. But when an invalid application is received, as the image on the right now shows, what you can do is request changes within the BOPS tool. And that might sound like really simple functionality, and that's probably because it's email, and that's currently the way that things are done. And we don't always think of email as a workaround, but the tool brings that kind of communication in. So you're not always relying on one planning officer managing the flow of the conversation. And equally, you've got an audit trail so that if things do need to be audited, for example, in the case of a planning appeal, all of that data is logged rather than having to go through email chains and kind of laboriously pulling that information out. If we jump to the next slide, so the best thing of all about both of the tools I've outlined is that they're already talking to each other. So lawful development certificate applications are received via RIPA and they are processed in BOPS. And in the future, we do hope to build out links into the kind of existing or legacy software out there provided by existing service providers. So that might be the planning portal on the side of the applicant, and it might be iDocs Uniform or Tascomi, two of the most common back office planning systems on the market used by planning officers. Let's go to the next slide, and I think this is my last one. So just to summarise that, the next steps for us in this is part of this wider planning reform agenda now, which is interesting because it has tie-ins with things like policy, legislation, and other conversations that we haven't typically been having around our digital products. But what we're going to be doing over the next 6 months is road mapping the next set of features or perhaps application types. How do we move beyond just lawful development certificates and maybe think about processing applications for full planning permission? That's definitely on our radar, and we need to work out when that happens. We know that this tool has received some great interest from other local authorities, and hopefully we'll receive more based on today. And we're going to run a series of engagement activities from about September onwards. So there'll be structured conversations to help you find out a bit more about these tools and how you could use them. Because what we're looking to do in the next 6 to 8 months really is to bring on at least 5 new partner councils. We're looking to onboard that wave of councils in early 2022, and there will be some kind of formal process behind that. It's likely going to be led by some sifting criteria where you and your council will be able to understand whether you might be ready to join us. And this is going to be a range of things. So things like, well, do you have senior buy-in? Is it on the planning side? Is it on the financial side? And you probably need both. Can you integrate with GovPay? Are your GIS layers of planning constraints ready? So it's going to be a bit of a list, and you'll be able to kind of see based on that how ready you might be. And then following that, we're expecting there to be a formal expressions of interest process. We'll be providing support for resources to join that first wave or really second wave of pioneer councils, where we're aiming to improve the tools and implement them in your councils. That brings me to the end of what I have to say. So if you want to get in touch, fund@localdigital.gov.uk, and I'll also put my email address in the chat too, so you can reach out to me, and we'll maybe work out what that looks like, but add you to the list so that you at least find out more about the engagement activities we'll be doing later on in the year. That brings me to the end of what I have to say. I believe I'm now passing over to my colleague Rachel.
Oh, sorry, just quickly, Matt.
Oh, go on.
There's a question from Tony. Does BOPS integrate with the National Planning Portal?
Not yet. Very much on our agenda. Yeah, so we design these as they are up to a kind of minimum viable product level. They work with each other, and now we need to talk about how that fits with the existing ecosystem, because we understand that's going to be a huge incentive for councils to come and use this, because you don't need to wait until we've built the full service. You can start using bits of it now.
Thanks. Rachel.
Thanks, Mayan. Thanks, Matt.
It's making me reconsider the process that I've just been through with my loft conversion. I think it would have been much easier if I was a few months down the line. Thank you. So yeah, my name's Rachel. Oh my goodness, something strange is happening with the slides. Sorry. We might have to, yeah, I might have to do a next slide job instead. Apologies for that. I'll just wait for those to come back up. But yeah, my name's Rachel. I'll be taking you through some of the things that the local digital cyber team has been up to this year. So I'll wait for my slides to pop up, but I'm a fairly new member of the team. I've joined recently as a product manager. We've also got another couple of new joiners who are here or on their way. So you can see on the screen there that Ben is our lead of our cyber programme. He heads up the cyber team. Emily has also joined recently as our policy and engagement lead. There she is, giving you a wave. Mark is our service designer. And as I said, I'm Rachel, also another relatively recent joiner. And if that's not enough new people for you, we've also got a new delivery manager on the way who'll be joining us soon. Next one, please. So yeah, it's been a busy year in the world of cyber. I'm sure you'll have seen some of the headlines. Unfortunately, we've seen 2 successful ransomware attacks on councils this year, and the recovery from those is still ongoing. So we know that there's a very real risk to the sector, and we're really committed to helping local authorities improve their cyber posture and reduce the potential impacts of some of these incidents. So this year we've been working hard to help councils remediate some of their biggest cyber risks through our cyber support workstream. And our purpose here is to provide expertise and support to identify issues and gaps in cybersecurity. We're supplying guidance, tools, support and a roadmap for cyber enhancement and for treatment of some of these issues. We've built a team with an external supplier so that they could help councils on a technical level and work through certain issues with them. So this support aims to help the local authorities understand their risks, address them and prioritise their risks. So the plan was never for MHCLG to come along and sort of take over, but instead to collaborate with the local teams and work with them to solve some of these problems. Next one, please. So it all starts with the cyber survey, which we'd asked councils to complete last year. That survey is still live, so there's still time if your council hasn't completed it yet. I'll give you some more details at the end of the section, so don't feel like you've got to scribble that down. We'll share that at the end. So the survey results that we had through this helped us to spot common areas of risk and opportunities for improvement. And the results showed that really, whatever the baseline is, there's always work to be done. So based on the survey results, we selected a cohort of councils that we would focus on. For our first group, they would have our attention. And we began after the survey with a workshop with those councils and produced a report for each IT estate. So this was our baseline that we would base our support on. And the report was converted then into a treatment plan. So effectively a sort of roadmap or a list of actions for improvement. And then the support was given to allow councils to progress that plan and work on some of those actions. So the support has taken the form of clinics, which is open to and attended by all councils in the cohort, as well as one-to-one cyber support sessions, so with that technical team, so that they can work through specific issues side by side with the council IT leads and help them resolve them. Based on those survey results, then we selected, so yeah, we found essentially there were 7 key cyber focus areas, and these have guided the support that we've given. Next one, please. So we've worked through those 7 topics through the workshops, the cyber support sessions and the clinics that I mentioned. But alongside that, the team have produced a whole collection of targeted artifacts or kind of guidance documents relating to each of those 7 cyber focus areas. So you might not be able to see the small writing on the screen there or the acronyms, but hopefully you can see that it is fast kind of building up into a nice big library of support for local authorities. So here's a nice quote from one of our participants, and it's something that we've heard a lot. So the reports and the cyber treatment plans that come with that MHCLG logo at the top have really themselves become a tool for IT teams, and they can use those to kind of grab the attention of their senior management teams. So we've seen sort of numerous instances where maybe the local team
knew what they needed to do to improve, but perhaps were struggling to get that kind of management senior level buy-in. So the program's really helped them to do that. And in many cases has actually sort of accelerated plans that were already in the pipeline, but maybe just weren't considered priorities or didn't have the traction that they needed. I'll speak in a moment about something called our cyber health framework as well, which we also hope will contribute to this sort of raising of the profile of cyber requirements to senior management. So right now, this is where we're at with our cyber support work. We've partnered with 34 councils so far and worked with them to create these prioritised cyber treatment plans with the support of our technical experts. And we've provided a total of £4.4 million across those councils to carry out the remediation work that's needed. So this might have helped pay for new products, licenses, additional resource to improve their cybersecurity posture. And councils who have worked through their cyber treatment plans have so far either started or completed almost 80% of the actions contained in their plans. So some really good progress being made there. So if that sounds really exciting to you and you're not already involved, then the first thing that you can do as a council, as I mentioned, if you've not done it already, is to make sure that you respond to that cyber survey. So this enables us to identify the next cohort that we'll be working with that support, and it helps continue to build our understanding of the sector. So yeah, please make sure that your council has responded. It's that kind of gateway into our support offering. And I think Charlotte's just shared the link in the chat. Thank you. Next slide, please. So the other thing that's been keeping us really busy this year is our cyber support framework, our cyber health framework, which has the working title of Assess Your Cyber Health. And we started the year with a sort of pre-discovery or an exploration just to understand the lay of the land. And on the next slide, you will see the kind of 9 key themes that came out of that. So we saw this kind of evidence emerging. We could see that there was some good and some not so good practice going on across these areas. And when we moved into discovery, we explored 3 hypotheses that were developed based on this research and with our stakeholders. So the first is that cybersecurity risk would decrease at local authorities if they subscribe to clear standards, expectations and goals. The second one is that cybersecurity risk would be reduced if the behaviours, ownership and responsibility for cyber health at local authorities was improved. And finally, vulnerability to cyber attacks would be reduced if local authorities built, planned and maintained their services in a secure manner. So how can we support the sector in achieving this? Next one, please. So the first thing to understand with the help of this cartoon is that there's already a range of technical standards that councils either have to follow or choose to follow. And this can kind of lead to confusion for some. And in some cases, there's a bit of a false sense of security because compliance might only be required on like a small part of the IT estate, for example. So some standards we can't get away from, so taking card payments, for example, we can't get rid of those. But we certainly don't want to add another one to the list. So we've started exploring how we might help councils navigate the standards that already exist and plug some of the gaps. So our goal is to help councils understand what good organisational cyber health is and help them to take steps to improve their cyber resilience. So we've seen some really, really good work happening in other areas such as the NHS and in Scotland, and we've been using that to help develop our own prototypes and sort of inform our testing during our alpha phase. And our alpha phase has allowed us to ask some really big questions that are moving us towards our sort of longer term goals that I've just outlined there. So will a framework be valuable to local authorities? Will it be able to guide them to improve their cybersecurity maturity? So this phase is all about testing to make sure that we go on to build the right thing, or maybe not build anything at all if that's what it tells us. So we want to answer yes to those questions and be absolutely sure that we're not just creating that 15th standard for people to deal with. So we want to help local authorities in getting to the place where they know that there's a minimal level of cybersecurity to reach. They're able to determine their own organisation's level of cybersecurity, and they're also able to devise a path to build even greater resilience. And one of the options that we've been exploring to do this in our alpha phase is a self-assessment tool containing a bank of questions, and we've built this into a prototype for some early user testing. So yeah, big thank you to everyone who's participated so far in the user research and the testing. There will be some contact details at the end, so if you're interested in getting involved, then do get in touch with us. So these screen grabs come from the prototype, and they just show how we might introduce our cyber progression level so that councils can see that minimum level of security and what they need to improve. We've also mapped some of those. I saw very briefly then a PSN or a DSPT pop up in the chat. I couldn't quite read the message, but yeah, we've been looking at how we might map those questions and working with colleagues across government so that we can try and reduce the burden on councils in reporting or meeting some of those standards. So really that brings us to today, and the supplier contracts for both of those work streams that I've spoken about are actually coming to an end. So we're pausing right now to take stock over the summer while we start our new commercial processes to continue this work. And we're also really busy thinking about what the next 3 years of the programme will look like. We're eagerly awaiting publication of the government cybersecurity strategy, which is due later in the year, and we're getting some sort of really ambitious goals in place, so we'd love for you to be involved. And just on this final slide, there's some information about how you can get involved and get in touch with us. So you can read more about our work in our sprint notes and through the MHCLG digital blog. And we've also got a cyber newsletter that we'll share the link to, where you can sign up for show and tells when they resume after the summer. So yeah, sign up on there if you want to be kept up to date when those restart. And yeah, we'd just love to hear any suggestions that you've got for our longer term plans. So what are the most impactful interventions that we should be focusing on? What are the biggest cyber challenges that you're facing? And we've got a couple of email addresses that we'll share in the chat as well. So yeah, drop us a line. And that's it from me.
We've got some questions, Rachel. So this one from Tony. Do you have any model that reflects cyber risk into financial risks? As typically cyber never gets traction as it's not easily possible to stack it up versus other risks. So for example, if I do X, I'll save Y or grow NNDR by Z. If I do this cyber thing, I spend X amount and I get what? Question mark.
What an excellent question. How difficult is that to quantify?
An answer actually to Tony in the chat. So I can sort of read out what I was going to say if you and we cutting across you, Rachel, but.
No, go ahead. I was going to say it's a challenge we've been facing within the team, right, with trying to sort of quantify the work that we're doing and the impact that it has from a financial point of view. It's not a straightforward thing to do, but yeah, go ahead, Ben.
Yeah, so I think it's a really good question, and also I guess the more we share, it can also help create the business case for attackers as well. So there's a real fine sort of balance of what we put into the public domain around like actual costs. But there is stuff out there. So particularly on the ransomware attack, I think Redcar Council were quoted by BBC or in the BBC saying their recovery costs were around £10 million. We know that that doesn't sort of reflect the wider impact on service delivery or the wider economy. So there are things like the housing market can stall if a council can't do land charge searches and all that. There's like a whole onward chain of things. So there's definitely stuff like narrative things that colleagues in our red team, so the Resilience and Emergency Division, have just done a case study of Redcar Council's cyber attack. You can hear a lot more about sort of the impacts and both on the council but in the kind of the wider place as well. So we can share stuff like that. But yeah, it's something on our list, and as Rachel said, yeah, we're kind of working on it.
Thanks, Ben. Thanks, Rachel. Is there any more questions for cyber? Don't think there is. Thank you both, but feel free to pop questions in the chat if you think of any more, and Ben and Rachel and the team will be happy to answer those. Right, so next slide please, Charlotte. So we've just got a few things that you can get involved with. So if I can introduce Charlotte Allen and Charlotte Barnes to take us through that. Charlotte, we can't hear you if you're speaking.
Oh, her internet might have gone. I can go first if that helps.
Crack on, Charlotte. A.
Yeah, there's two Charlottes. Okay, I'll whiz through these and we'll go back to Charlotte's slides in a second. So this is what I want to talk about. I want you to share your stories with us. So it's starting a new monthly council feature that's going to be in our newsletter. And the reason we're doing this is because we want to create a space for councils to have a spotlight on the work they're doing, and to be able to celebrate what they're doing and share with other councils. So we really want to keep in more regular touch with our signatories, and we're keen to hear about any kind of activities that you're doing, how you're contributing to the local digital movement. And the scope is broad, so you don't need to think, oh, I've just done this like little thing, our team's done a little win, I won't share that. We want you to share anything, whether it's, you know, big or small, anything's interesting to us. So any kind of achievements that you've done, let us know. We want to celebrate what you've been doing. And the declaration isn't really a set of rules, so in the same vein, you don't have to think that just because something can't be like directly linked to declaration, you don't share it. We really want to shout about the work that you've been doing in our monthly newsletter. I'll put the link up to Dave Briggs's blog shortly, and hopefully this will inspire you to share your work and your achievements in the same way. And if you are interested in this, at the moment, if you could contact campaigns at localdigital.gov.uk, but you can also fill out a form and register your interest. That will be sent to you shortly. We are going to send out an email with a link to our recording, which will be on YouTube, and any links that are in the chat. So if you are interested, do let us know and we'll reach out to you. I'm not sure if Charlotte's got her internet back yet.
I'm just going to do the quick shout out for training. So if you wouldn't mind just hopping back to like the training slides. And yeah, thank you. So prior to the COVID kind of in March in 2020, we did offer a number of free training via GDS Academy, but obviously had to kind of switch once COVID started. So now we're offering all virtual and online courses via FutureLearn, and we've got 350 licenses that have been purchased, so anyone in local authorities can kind of apply and redeem those licenses. So please, we still have licenses available, so if you haven't done so already and keen to take some of the courses, please have a look at our training library, and we'll pop the link in the chat for you. Next slide, please. So what courses are available? So these are all digital and technology courses, including agile project management, data science, coding, DevOps, cybersecurity, user-centered design, like all of the great things, again, that, you know, we kind of champion on the declaration. So again, please help us use up the ones that we've already purchased. And next slide, please. Since launch, we've had 100 applications from people in local gov. And so I think there's 68 distinct councils up and down the country that have used it. So you can see some of the most popular courses here, and then some of the reasons why people applied. Next slide, please. And people have found it really positive so far, and we get feedback from our learners via survey. So actually this helps us to shape what courses we offer going forward. So again, really thankful for people filling out those surveys after they finish the course. And next slide. And again, just to reiterate the third time, please sign up for the free courses. We want to get these courses out to as many people as possible. So on that kind of rushed overview of training, we're going to move on to the declaration quiz. So I'm going to pass over to our very, very tropical quiz master, Nick Hill. Thank you everyone for joining us today, and thank you to our speakers, Dave, Annie, Will, and Melanie, and of course we just said our glamorous quiz master, Nick. So I just can't say, like, having worked in like 3 different councils before, I know firsthand how difficult it can be, and I continue to be inspired by the hard work that councils do every day. And this is really a sense, like a swell of energy and enthusiasm. Nate's being part of local government, what you do is so super exciting at the moment. So again, to wrap up, you can get in touch with us via the 2 emails on the right, and you can also follow us on the links below. Before we go, we would love to get a picture of everyone. So if you're comfortable to